You see it. Let's get it. Mitre CVEs, expose vulnerable systems. Mitre's a place where they connect vulnerabilities for all systems, which is a ton of. But a lot of times people report them. They give them to the company. Let the company have time to fix them before they actually report them to the general public. So they seem to had a glitch in the system. Let's go through the article. Security advisory accidentally exposes vulnerable systems. A security advisory for vulnerability CVE published by Mitre has accidentally exposed links to remote admin consoles of over a dozen vulnerable IP devices since April 2022. Bleeping Computers became aware of this issue yesterday after getting tipped off by a reader who prefers to remain anonymous. The reader was baffled on seeing several links to vulnerable systems listed within the reference section of the CVE's advisory. The CVE advisory, published by Mitre, gets syndicated verbatim across a large number of public sources, feeds, and infosec news sites, and vendors providing this data to their customers. The reference section of these advisories typically lists links of the original source, write-up, blog post, or demo that explains the vulnerability. However, including links to publicly exposed unpatched systems can potentially allow threat actors to now target these systems and conduct their malicious activities. So we're going to read that one more time. However, including links to publicly exposed unpatched systems can potentially allow threat actors to now target these systems and conduct their malicious activities. Bleeping, Bleeping Computer also conducted additional investigation of how this issue may have occurred and reached out to Mitre as well as some security experts to better understand if this is normal or even an acceptable practice. A vulnerability advisory published by Mitre for a high sensitive information disclosure vulnerability in April ironically disclosed links to over a dozen live IoT devices vulnerable to the flaw. It isn't unusual for security advisories to include a reference section with several links that validates the existence on the vulnerability, but any such links typically lead to proof of concept demonstrations or write-up explaining the vulnerabilities rather than a vulnerable system themselves. I wonder if somebody's going to try to sue Mitre for that, right? If they post their system and they believe that Mitre leaking that out to the whole nation caused their system to get hacked, I wonder if they're going to get sued for that. After vulnerabilities are made public, attackers use public IoT search engines like Shodan or Census to hunt for target vulnerable devices. So Shodan is the most popular. If you go out there to list tons of vulnerable systems, but once again, uh, Mitre usually finds it, or whoever finds it in the research community, they usually give the company time to fix the vulnerability before they put the notice out that there is a vulnerability. All of which makes this a particularly uncanny case for a public security bulletin to list not one, but locations of several vulnerable devices that are still connected. Because a large number of sources rely on Mitre and NIST for receiving vulnerability feeds, the CVS advisory has already been syndicated by several vendors, public sources, servers providing CVE data. So yeah, this is one there. Like they say, there's a fee to it. I use this one a lot. CVE. Go out there and put in your product or your application. It tells you if it's vulnerabilities for that, right? But that's where it listed the potential sites that had the vulnerability, which is unusual. Click on any of the above reference links will lead you to a remote administration dashboard of the vulnerable IP cameras or video devices, potentially allowing them to be viewed live, cam feed, or exploit them for vulnerability. Bleeping Computer did not perform any kind of penetration test or further engagement with these links other to ensure that they were live and immediately notified by Mitre of the issue. You see how Bleeping Computers word that they're like, we do not want to be sued. We didn't go on anybody's system. We just looked at the link. We looked at the camera. It looks live. We shut it down. Bleeping Computer notified Mitre yesterday of this issue and why this could be a security concern. Surprisingly, we were asked by Mitre why did we think these sites should not be included in the advisory. We further told Mitre in the past list the URLs or other points that may be vulnerable or similar to CVE centuries. Well, that's weird that Mitre would say that. Somebody at Mitre is about to be fired. Somebody at Mitre said, well, why shouldn't they list those sites? Yeah, somebody's going to be fired. Will Dorman, a vulnerability analyst at CERT Center, called this both not a normal and a very bad thing to do. Security researcher John Lucian said the same thing in a statement. It is disrespectful to the affected parties to list their live vulnerabilities instance within a CVE. The parties involved in the creation of the CVE entry should know better. Somewhat surprising, according to the GitHub repo. The author was Mitre themselves. It is true CVE's advisory itself was published by Mitre, the parent organization of the CVE project. This is often the first point of contact for users reporting security vulnerabilities in the third-party system requesting for CVE's identifiers. A lot of people try to start their cybersecurity career that way. If you find a very large bug, publish it with MITRE and get a CVE with the actual CVE number, they actually list your name as a researcher, right, to the community. So that's why a lot of people do that. So Leaping Computer discovered that the original source of the mishap was a security write-up published by one of more Chinese security researchers at GitHub, while MITRE CVE entry for the vulnerability had been reserved and waiting for production. It's in the GitHub version of the advisory that several links to vulnerable devices was listed as examples. And this information to appear have been copied and pasted by MITRE CVE entry that was later syndicated across several sites. Once again, that's the CVE site, super popular. That's one of the feeds. Ironically, the original advisory published by GitHub has long been deleted. I just copied and pasted somebody else's work isn't really a valid excuse and not living up to MITRE standards. All right, so yeah, so they just said they cut and pasted the researcher's information, and the original researcher had it in there. But like you said, MITRE's got to do a better job of vetting that. You see, this is the only time MITRE CVE database has fallen short of validating links provided to them in advisories and retroactively removing dead links. Right. So, within a few hours of the email to MITRE, the CVE advisor swiftly updated to remove all the reference links pointing to vulnerable IoT devices, both for MITRE CVE project, GitHub repo, and the database. But this update may not remove this information from third-party sources that I already have received and published an earlier copy of the entry. When publishing security bulletins of vulnerability advisory, caution may be exercised to ensure only necessary information about a vulnerability is revealed to help defenders action the security flaws without inadvertently aiding the malicious actors. So once again, MITRE is releasing links for exposed systems, which is not good because they're actually the reference and the authority of that. Once again, Professor Black Ops, please subscribe.